I just want to add something onto that. Everyone here is going to have a career in clinical research, and you have to learn statistics. So at all your institutions, you have these little mini statistical courses put on by your statisticians. You got to go to them. I have to tell you, I'm far in my career. I'm ready to get a master's degree in statistics. That's how much I need to know statistics. It's really hard for me to try to find the time. You guys are at the level now where, most of your universities have CTSA programs. I'm very involved with ours. We give money for people like you to get a master's in public health or statistics or whatever. So at your stage of the game, please avail yourself of the numerous resources to be better versed in statistics. And if you're interested, you can email me, because I've been all over Amazon and I have like 1 million statistics books written for like an idiot. And there's about 5 of them that I can't live without, and they're on my desk because they're written in English. So I'll tell you what they are if you want to email me. And Carla will probably say, those are horrible, but they talk to me. Yeah, go to Vail. It's held usually in end of July. It's too late now. I think the applications are already done. But it's a week where you bring a clinical trial and you write it. But the mornings are all didactic sessions, and there's a lot of statistics. That's a great point, Heather. Okay, so we're running over, so I'm going to be really fast. So I'm going to talk a little bit fast. And I'm going to talk about grant writing pearls. So you've heard, the whole worlds of grants, but one of the major things for me in learning how to write a grant, and I write a ton of them just like everyone here, is you have to know your grant components and you have to pay attention to the details. So I think the first thing you really have to know is that grant writing is fun. If it's not fun for you, you're going to have a hard time in this business. And if you look at any big laboratory head or anything like that, they love to write grants. And I'll tell you why. First of all, it forces you to take time to get up to date in your field. So if you say, I have a June 1st grant deadline, you literally clear your schedule for 2 months to put this grant together. Because to run your lab is money, or to run your clinical program is money, and you need to bring in the money. So you're always focused on the grants. And so when you're reading, you start developing novel ideas. And usually those months that you're writing the grant are very learning times for you. And how often does that happen to us? When you're putting it together and you realize, wow, I don't know how to do this, it forces you to call people and bring in new collaborators. I can tell you every March 1st, I must get 10 phone calls with, would you do this on a grant, this on a grant? So it really helps you build your collaborator network. But most importantly, it makes you get your game plan for the next few years. So for me, a grant is a living, breathing document. After I get the grant funded, I make a Gantt chart, we follow the Gantt chart, it's your business plan. I get a postdoc, I get a clinical fellow, I go, here, read it, it's got everything, read all the references, this is what you need to know for the next 5 years, right? So if you craft the grant, if you really work at it, you can use it for lots of other projects. I mean, part of it is some papers, part of it is a review article, and then finally, grant writing's a job, don't take it personally. I come from a business family, and the first time I didn't get a grant, my sister's like, you doctors, you're always winning everything. I'm a lawyer. I go in and I lose things all the time, so get over it. So it's a roadmap, it's a business plan, it's a project management tool. That's what a grant is. And it's an organizational way that you can build your empire. So you'll like it. Don't listen to people who say don't like writing grants. The biggest problem, and the reason why people don't like writing grants, is because we approach grants like writing an English term paper. Here's your theme, start writing from top to bottom. And that is not how people review grants. I'm brought in by a funding agency to look at the work you're going to do and what you're proposing to do and whether you can do it. That's pretty much your experimental approach. Most people write a grant by starting at the hypothesis and the background, and to be honest with you, For many beginning grants, the background and the rationale are 2/3 of the grant. It's like reading a Nature Medicine review article. You know, you start out with prostate cancer is found in X% of people in the United States. If I read that one more time, I'll projectile vomit. What I really want to see is, what are your aims? What do you propose you're going to do? That's the foundation for the whole grant. Writing a grant is not creative writing. It's not writing a novel. It's technical writing. You build a structure, you fill in the structure. I want to see preliminary results. Can you prove that you can do what you're going to do? But the most important thing that I spend 85% of my time doing is really picking apart your experimental design, because I'm telling the funder, I'm going to tell them that they're going to get something out of this grant. So how the experiments fall together and how you set that up is what the money's for. Grant, money, percent effort equal the experiments or the clinical trial you're going to do. So how do I do that? Well, number one, you don't start by writing your aims and then writing this rationale that goes on for the whole month that you have to write the grant. You start first with your preliminary results. I do that even before I really finalize my specific aims. So I might write down, here are 3 aims that I think I'm going to do in this proposal. But then I literally take every piece of data I have that I think would support the grant. I put it on a piece of paper like it's going to be published in a journal, and I take all my piece of paper and I sit down at a big table and I put them out in the order of the story. And I can tell you 70% of the time when I'm looking as a reviewer at my own data, I realize that the aims I wrote are like 5 grants forward from what I actually have. So it forces me to really come in, look to see, will the data I have support my aims, and what data I need to prove that I can do this. Once I have that down and I know the data that's going to go into this grant, then I write my specific aims. And usually I go from, 25,000 people were diagnosed with prostate cancer this year to this particular targeted therapy will work in these 10 people with prostate cancer, because it becomes very, very focused. And that's what the beauty of a beautiful grant is. It's a very focused grant with a compelling question. So then, after you have that, you start working on your experimental designer approach. And you're constantly thinking, will the experiments I have proposed answer the aims? And will the answer be definitely yes or no? That means you have to say, what is success for this aim? You have to set parameters, because, science is philosophy, right? Nothing's right or wrong. There's a lot of opinions. So people might say to me, I'm in immunology. So they go, oh, that's a dumb question. That'll never really work. Well, if I set it so I'll answer a yes or no answer, I've read grants where I totally don't believe with the direction they're going, but I say, this grant should be funded because they're going to prove that this is not right. And that'll be the end of this discipline of science. But the grant was so well structured, I could hardly not give it a great score to have it go on. So once you have that all put together, then you have the background. And instead of starting at, the big global cancer is bad, suddenly you're way down looking at the background or the rationale as a condiment to the grant. What am I missing that I need to bring in from the literature to prove my point? So instead of being a global Nature Medicine article, your whole background is really focused at your specific question. Literature to support your premise, keep it short and to the point. It used to be that we talked about background significance, research design, preliminary studies. Now, many people are going to the NIH format, which is very integrated. We talk about significance, innovation, and then your approach. And so what I do when I am writing that type of conceptually integrated application, I still take all my preliminary results and then I say, what preliminary results are innovative or significant? It's really interesting if someone has a good grant application and they're writing their innovation section and they don't mention themselves in the innovation section. You take your best data, you put it right in the innovation section, you're kind of mixing your preliminary results with innovation. You show how innovatively you discovered this, or you made this observation, or you have this cadre of patients, so that your data, what's going on at your institution, is woven all through the application, not just dumped into the approach showing this is where your preliminary studies are. So the current way we write applications are highly integrated. So use everything you have at your fingertips to put yourself all the way through every section: significance, innovation, and approach. And take those pieces of data to show that you can do GWAS mining or something like that as an example of, similar to what we show here, we'll do this in, let's say, another disease. So I just want to briefly go over a few things. Preliminary results. You want to justify your idea and show you can do the work. So the data needs to be relevant to the proposed work. Make sure the data says what you want it to say. Show raw data that you've actually generated. And usually we talk about the data in the order of the specific aims. Include proof of principle stuff. If you're going to do expression analyses and you're working with one of the cores at your cancer center, have the core guy give you some data about their reproducibility over time. There's a lot of data out there that people just don't use. For the specific aims, you have to really be specific. So here are some don'ts to characterize the function of lovastatin. Okay? I have no idea. When I'm a reviewer, when I read your aims, I want them to be so specific I can say, okay, to determine what level RAS signaling can be inhibited with lovastatin. I know exactly the type of experiments I need to see to answer that question. So really get down to the nitty-gritty. Be repetitive, use the themes of the proposal over and over again. And for the specific aims, when you just define your approach, use the exact words. Again, it's not creative writing, it's technical writing. And the more repetitive, the more you're kind of hammering your idea into your reviewer. Make the aims cohesive, but not totally dependent. So if I was going to look at estrogen receptor signaling and I said the first thing I'm going to do is create an estrogen knockout mouse, aim 1. Well, if I don't create the mouse, I'm not going to be able to answer the question. I'm going to do a phase 1 study, and then I'll go on, aim 2 is going to be the phase 2 study. Well, what if the phase 1 study shows horrible toxicity? I'm not giving you $5 million. I can't get that back once I give it. Aim 2 was totally dependent on aim 1, so you really can't do that. But the most important thing to avoid over-ambitiousness, the 5 grant type of proposal, is make sure that your aims can be accomplished with the money and time requested. I'm going to do a phase 2 study in 45 patients with ALK mutation lung cancer in 2 years. Not going to happen, right? So leave yourself enough time that after you write the grant, you can do a reality check on what's going on. Experimental design, here's where the money is. I really look at things as people who go above and beyond and people who have fatal flaws. Fatal flaws, the experiments aren't going to answer the aims. And you think, oh, how dumb, how could anyone do that? Well, a lot of times what people do with the aims is they give more background and they kind of describe the experiments, but they never say what the expected results are. So I'm going to compare drug A and drug B and see which one inhibits RAS signaling. How? So you're going to do phosphoblots. Are you going to do densitometry? Are you going to quantitate it? What level of quantitation would you say would be the pick a winner for this? You have to set your parameters. Another fatal flaw, you can't do the work. You've shown me no data that you can do that type of work. It's too ambitious. Rarely it's already been done. The people who go above and beyond have a pitfall section. So they show me that they're troubleshooting. And when I write my grants after every aim, I have future directions and potential pitfalls. And I don't care if I can't think of a thing. I'll send an email out to all my lab and say, here's the aim, someone give me some pitfalls, to let them know I know that science isn't easy and I'm already thinking about if it doesn't work how I'm troubleshooting. And again, you have to talk to a statistician. If you're writing a clinical trial grant, do not cut and paste the protocol. The protocol is a cookbook. The grant is a way to sell your idea. So instead of saying, oh, I'm going to do a study in HER2 positive patients, exclude LVEF less than 40%. Instead, in a grant, I would write, we'll use a highly selected patient population of patients with great cardiac function because this particular new agent has been shown in animal models too. So you're teaching, you're showing them your expertise. Be specific, talk about controls, keep your background in other sections, focus on detail. So finally, how can you help yourself once this perfect grant has been funded? Well, Heather talked about make the grant easy to read, justify both margins, use large font, and don't italicize and bold all the way through the grant. A lot of times if you bold something you think is important and the reviewer doesn't think it's that important, they get a little miffed. And you just want the reviewer to have a good time reading your grant. My mentor taught me that there's 4 types of people in terms of grant writing. A great person with a great idea, they're going to be funded no matter what they do. Some guy writing the grant in his garage, no, this guy is not going to get funded with a dumb idea. But the rest of us fall into the 2 other categories, and this is kind of 75% of people. Really great person with a weird idea, it's not really their area, or a person with a great idea, but no one knows them, and that's the category you guys fall into. So these are maybes. How can you change yourself from a maybe to a fund? Well, know how to fix yourself. When you write your budget justification, don't put a lot of TBA, which means to be announced. I don't have a research nurse, to be announced. I don't have a technician, to be announced. Instead, you go to your mentor, you go, Sally Joe, help me here. Can I put Sally Joe into this? And then in the budget justification, write how she helped me generate the preliminary data. If I get funded, I won't use Sally Joe, but I need to use her name right here. Make it look like you have a tribe, a team that's helping you. Resources environment. Usually you turn to the guy in the office next to you, hey, your last grant, can I have your resources environment section? You plug it in. Use the resources and environment section as another grant. I'm doing GWAS, so we've got this great genomics center and we've got this great biomedical informatics stuff. I'm doing adaptive T-cell therapy. We've got a GMP facility. I work with them all the time. Here's all the cool stuff. We read the resources and environment, and I've seen people, it's like an extension of their grant. It's a beautiful thing. Letters of support, have a lot of them. You know, if someone's going to help you do something, you write it for them. Dear Nora, my best friend, you know, I don't ever let people write their own letters of support. You want them to seem like they know you. Of course, they're going to support you because you're going to give them money, but really make those letters sound like they know you and have detail about your experiments so that the review committee really gets a sense that you have these collaborators that are interested. We've already talked about commitment of reagents. You have to have letters. Appendices, if you're putting in a clinical trial grant, you have to add the protocol. Everything else, no appendix. And then some smaller organizations allow you to send in supplemental information before the grant is reviewed. If you're working on the grant, for sure send it in. Just call the place where you're sending the grant in and ask them if that's possible. So my final slide is this. Usually the timeline will kill you. Find out January 1st what grants you're going to write for the year, and then schedule your whole year around that, giving yourself at least 2 months to write a grant. That will give you time to write it, walk away from it, read it, walk away from it, read it, walk away from it, edit it. Have someone else read the grant before you send it in, and they have to have like 3 weeks to be able to give you, very substantial comments. You have to start early. Work off a budget while you're writing. As soon as you get your first draft of your experiments, budget them out. That will prevent you from being expansive or overambitious. And determine very early who you need to help and make sure that they have their schedule open to do that, especially your mentor. And then finally, like I said before, use the reviews to make yourself better. Even if the grant is funded right away, we still sit down and take the reviews, and we've modified clinical trials based on the reviews we've gotten back from NIH and other reviewers. So that's it in a nutshell. We have time for a few quick questions while I ask the people who are going to do the mock study section to come up and sit at their names. So does anyone have any questions for me about anything?
You're talking about Sally Joe.
Yeah.
Is that exchangeable in the future? Could she not fill that position?
Oh, it's totally exchangeable. So you can put down anyone's name, and then once you get the grant, you know, that person is probably oversubscribed, and so you hire your own person or a part of a new person. Yes?
Hi, Samir Amrali from University of Vermont. What is the best way to utilize the resource of a grant specialist in your division?
And what is that?
Like the grants office in your department.
It depends on what your grants office does. At our institution, the University of Washington, we're a big public institution. You're lucky if the main purpose of the grants office is to make sure your finances are in order and to sign off on the grant. There's no other support for you. For large, very expensive grants, many times there are supports in terms of people helping you put different grant components together about institutional resources. And some grants offices actually have writers that will help you. Now, I am very opinionated about a grant writer. No one can write about your work like you can. And I would tell you to run from grant and paper writers for primary writing. If you do have a grant writer or someone who supports grant writing, I would write the grant and have it be like the third or fourth draft, not the second draft. You're far into it now. Then you give it to the grant writer and ask them to go through it, correct spelling, make it more readable. So if you struggle with writing, having a person like that to improve the readability is very, very good.